Hi everyone, welcome to Founders Marketing Compass. My name is Etgar Shpivak. With my experience as a co-founder and as a marketer, I'm interviewing founders and investors to learn how to build healthy, lasting relationships between startup founders and their marketing team. Today, I'm with Jason Harper, the founder of Ready Signal and an AI economist. Hi Jason, how are you?
Hi, Edgar. Thank you for having me. I'm great.
The pleasure is all mine. So we had an incredible chat before, and happy if you can share a bit to our audience about yourself, about your journey, and what you're building at Ready Signal.
Sure, happy to. I think the the main thing, today I'm a husband and father, married and for 20 years now, and I have two children, 12 and 15, boy and girl, and really enjoying them, all of them and their journeys and all of our journeys together. My path to founding my company, Ready Signal, has been, quite the journey that started really back in like the late 1990s, where when I finished school, I got out to doing economics and econometric analysis. I'm an economist by training, and just went to worked for a variety of companies for a long period of time. I was one of the earlier employees at GoDaddy back in the day. That was super fun. But I transitioned to just regular career. I worked for some advertising agencies, spent a lot of time with with an Omnicom agency, Organic. That was definitely a formative period. Lots of great learnings there. They allowed me to explore anything I wanted with data and analytics. This was in like 2007 to 12, give or take. So a lot of the tools and things we use today, we didn't have, so we had to make them ourselves, which was super fun. Kind of did that and worked. Eventually, found myself at Ford, working at Ford, running an analytics group there, and then decided to quit and start a consulting company to focus on AI, machine learning, business intelligence. And for those, for quitting a job as an executive at an automotive company really made no sense. And so it was really hard to do. It took me 3 times to actually walk in and follow through with my resignation. But I did start a consulting company, grew that, and actually sold that back in 2023 to a PE-backed strategic acquirer, One Magnify. So we're part of their platform now. We're the AI and analytics kind of arm of them. And along the way, I'd spun out Ready Signal, which is a software company that focuses on it's basically an AI economist, as you mentioned. And yeah, I think that's where I am today. So I'm running Ready Signal, still work for and support One Magnify and RXA at One Magnify, my consulting team there. And I'm writing a parenting book because, of course, why not write a book?
So first of all, the parenting book we need to do a different podcast episode on this, because I think this is the most interesting, but it's going to be extremely hard to focus on the topic of this podcast. And you have seen both the entrepreneur and the investor angle, and taking you initially to your entrepreneur, to the founder hat. And you work today in Ready Signal, and you worked before in a company that you managed to sell to a private equity firm. And one of the key questions that I'm starting each interview is, how do you define your marketing team KPI? And moreover, how do you see them evolve over time with the growth of your companies?
Yeah, I mean, from a marketing perspective, it's really driven by what stage I'm at, right? So it's very different when I think about where my consulting company is at, which is now part of a global team. And so when I'm looking at what we're driving there is thought leadership type metrics. Like, are we getting in front of people? Are we getting keynote addresses? Are we getting audiences to webinars that are showing us as clearly reaching a broad audience as thought leaders? When I think about my Ready Signal role, the reality is everything's driving sales, right? So we do need awareness. We need folks to understand, like, hey, you can use external data to improve your models. And fortunately or unfortunately, with the tariffs and this whole thing that we're in right now, it's exposed a lot of companies to the importance of external market factors, and then Ready Signal solves that. And so we're taking the approach of, great, people are aware, but like, I need sales calls. Right. So I'm looking at very tactical. I'm very much in early stage startup founder mode, even though we're like, 6 years old now. But who am I calling? Who am I reaching? Like, I'm looking for very specific, how many emails are sent, how many calls are sent, how many meetings are booked. Right. So it's a very tactical, probably short-sighted, admittedly, but I want to sell.
And how do you measure the effectiveness of those marketing? If we take what's happening in Ready Signal, and you talk about, I'm focusing on very hard metrics, not
Mm-hmm.
like soft vanity metrics like I had like in a huge company. But those vanity metrics are really easy to manipulate. We want more thought leadership. Let's pay 50K, we get the keynote speaker and this event, and we can mark check. You coming small company, not a huge budget, and in many cases attribution is between horrible to not exist. How do you know that your marketing activities, that your marketing team is actually effective?
Well, so our number one metric is cash. It's very black and white. There's no way to make that up. It's when we're selling software as a service, and so do people buy? And we can just I can look at the bank account, right? Like our goal is like we want to get to cash flow break even, right, as a company. And so our marketing and sales efforts, if I can group those two things together, are designed to drive that. And so when I back that up a step, I know the activities that lead me to that outcome, which are meetings booked, right? So are we getting like how many calls am I personally on, right? Like we're a small company, 15 people, give or take, depending on how you slice it, maybe 20 people. And so I'm very active in that role. So I see like, is my calendar full with sales calls, right? And so these are things that are, for me, one thing, sales calls are important, right? And there's a difference between a networking call and a sales call, right? And so when I'm on the call, when someone else books the meeting and invites me to the call, that's a pretty good signal that this is a sales call. This isn't just a networking call that when I HubSpot, I can see like, oh, we're talking to so-and-so. Amazing. It's like, well, really, it's just they're getting to know each other, networking, which is good and healthy for the organization, for the folks on the team, but it's not a sales call. Right? So I'm looking for, and especially from a sales and marketing perspective, it is sometimes hard to tell like what's true sales and marketing activity for the organization. Like that's organic, investing a little bit. And as you mentioned, like, a pay to play environment where you drop 50K and you're the keynote speaker. I think that was the analogy or the example you used, which, man, I wish I had 50K to drop on that. I'd totally do that. But, we have partnerships with organizations. We just did a, webinar at the IIA a couple of weeks ago. It's great. Those are meaningful. For us. So tracking those very specific activities that are very difficult to kind of tell a story around, where it's just very black and white. Like I agree with what you're saying. It's important to have these very specific ideas.
So you talk about your marketing team, and you have this experience of building the company and now making your second venture. And when you hire your marketing team, especially those first marketing leaders, what are the top 3 qualities that you're looking for?
Well, I mean, number one, it's not even just limited to marketing team, the qualities, right? So we need to make sure that these folks are, I guess the 3 metrics I look for when I interview anybody: attitude, effort, and competence, in that order. So when I'm bringing in someone who's going to focus on marketing and building the organization from that lens, they need to bring positive attitude. They need to be someone that we want to spend time with, that wants to spend time with us, that's eager to learn, doesn't come to the table with, I know everything, do it my way, I've been doing this for N number of years. No, like like we need people who come in with like, hey, I have this background, but I need to learn Ready Signal. I need to learn what we're doing, and I'm going to be part of a team, right? So it's that attitude, and then the effort, right? We're a startup, we've been at this for a little while, but we're functioning very much like a startup. So you got to work a lot. And when you're working, you got to be really efficient with it. And we recently, 6 months ago or so, required everyone to be back in the office because we want to have people who want to work with each other and be around each other, and also be willing to come and physically do that around in that environment, which requires work. Like people got to get up early. Some of them have to get their kids off to school and organize their life in a way that gets them into the office, right? So those, building on that criteria then becomes a question of competence. So how can you demonstrate to us, what do you have the skills to deliver what we need you to deliver? And quite frankly, if you check those first 2 boxes and you show like the ability to gain the competence, I tend to give folks a lot of runway to learn on the job. Because when I have folks who have the attitude and the effort, I can trust them, right? So when I have that level of trust, that's like a huge business asset for me that I can really lean on, right? And then so that competence then I do believe can catch up very rapidly.
So we talk about hiring those team, and let's go, into like one of the elephant in the room. When you hire a marketing, how do you build their compensation structure? Because in sales, it's extremely easy. You have your base salary and then you have your sales commission. But what happened with marketing? I heard so many different opinions only on this podcast. And should you, as an early stage startup, like offer like performance based bonuses? Is this company based? Is this only your base salary plus your equity plus your yearly bonus? How do you structure this?
Yeah, I mean, and it is something that I don't know that I have it figured out. I mean, I've been managing and hiring people now for 25, 26 years, and have been involved in some level of compensation for that. So quarter century of that. It's a long time. I don't know that I still have it quite figured out. I mean, the best compensation are where you have aligned incentives, right? Where you can actually take like, okay, great, we need you to accomplish this, and that's worth this to the business. Therefore, I can pay you if you're able to accomplish this, right? Like if you can come up with those structures. And so from a sales perspective on a sales team, right, it's like pretty easy, easily measurable. Here's the results. You get paid more when you hit your results. It gets much softer when you're thinking about marketing, when you're now asking for some of those softer metrics. And so for me, I really rely heavily on, in my startup experience, those first, when you're building a team of, let's say, 20 or fewer people, like I think equity in that type of compensation where, like, generally speaking, everyone's aligned and we all want this thing to be successful, right? So I do give out equity. I think I had probably, 30 or over 30 folks when I sold my first company. We were a team of 60. I think over half the company had some equity, right? So, and that worked really well for me. And I think people enjoyed that. And so when I'm looking at, from specifically in the marketing roles, I think that's important. I think competitive salary, though, is also important because if you want, and I guess it depends on the level of role too, right? So if you're looking for more senior, like the marketing leader type role, I think you have to pay for that. Like there's going to be some, if you're at a point where you're hiring folks to lead marketing, you need to be willing to, like, that's an all-in bet. Right. That's not something that you should be half in on. And I can say this. I hired a CMO for my consulting company who's a friend who was, kind of looking for his next gig, and we worked it out. And I think, we paid him, probably half of what, he was worth, probably a quarter of what he felt he was worth. The results were awful. It was like promising kind of more of like the equity play and like, yeah, we'll get to the compensation as we can grow as an organization. But, he came in, he took, a pretty huge salary hit. And then I just basically became, I don't know, I think he was here for 9 months or so. And then we were both like, yeah, this is not working. It just didn't, I think it affected the whole relationship there too. So I've learned that from a marketing leader perspective, my experience is that it's an all-in situation. It's an investment, and it doesn't just require their own compensation too. There's budgets involved. There's like, this is a commitment. Like, you don't want to hire someone for marketing without a pretty solid, commitment to the tools that they're going to need to actually execute their job.
So this is really interesting because in many cases, early stage founders and investors actually, for the marketing roles in those early days, they're looking for those fractional CMOs and not for those like full times. And this is actually like one more debate that I really like, to see in this podcast. Your perspective is like to have the marketing like from what stage? Do you want like this marketing leadership role?
And I'll tell you, I don't fully have this one answered. Right. I mean, I think, part of my issue here is spending most of my career in marketing, in advertising agencies. And so I'm very critical and I feel like I can do this myself. Right. So it's hard for me to sort of extend sort of that to folks who don't, I think from like a fractional CMO type of a role, like that to me, I'm not interested in. I already have that. That's me. Like I have part of my time I put towards that. Like I don't, and I'm sure there are folks who are highly capable, right? Who probably add a ton of value, and it probably helps them that they have multiple customers or clients and partners and things from which to draw from. But I don't know. I don't have really the interest in that one, admitting that it's probably a problem that I have.
So if we talk about the problem, happy to hear from your entrepreneur, founder perspective. and this is like your second big company. You said the fifth, the sixth trial. What is the one mistake founders commonly make when they're working with their marketing team?
Well, a lot. There's a lot. It's hard to get to one. So I'll probably give you a few. You can edit this later if you just want to talk about one. So the resources that we're talking about, you can make some mistakes there. You can have mistaken expectations of when I bring in this person, then this is going to happen, and it takes a lot longer than you expect. Like my expectations are commonly wrong when I do bring in like marketing, even ad agencies when I brought them in to work with. The expectations I have are very, very high, and they're very infrequently met. Probably never. I think the understanding exactly how much it costs, right, to financial commitment to supporting these endeavors. And I think, the other thing too is with that, it probably sounds hypocritical, but I also feel like not making changes fast enough when I see things aren't working, right? Staying committed to a path that I don't believe is going to work out and not, and pouring kind of more, more money, or putting more resources behind something that's a failed effort. I'm very optimistic. So I generally, hang on to things a little too long. But, if you set up your marketing, from a human perspective, from a campaign perspective, from a strategy perspective with, as you started this conversation with concrete KPIs, right? So here's, the harder, the more solid the measurements are that you're putting into place, and you're setting your expectations on what your like return on investment is for marketing and those measurable KPIs, having those set up out of the gate with the people you are bringing in to lead it, and then sticking to, hey, we're not meeting expectations. We're measuring these things. You're doing these activities. We're not achieving these things, right? And then having the discipline to go through the exercise to establish that, which I don't have. I'm a ready, fire, aim person. I was talking to my buddy this morning about that from an investment that we're making, which I'm totally ready, fire, aim. But having the discipline to go through the exercise to establish those KPIs with the folks that you're expecting to deliver them, and then having the commitment to then, if it's not working, make the change.
So you said about like working with ad agencies or working like with your marketing team. We all know about the KPI, and what you said is like super clear. And yet, in so many cases, we see a big gap in the expectation of you as the founder from the marketer and vice versa, what he expects from you. What do you recommend? Like you talk about it, and we discuss on this a lot in this podcast. In your perspective, that you did the marketing role and you did the founder role, what is your tip for founders to their marketing team and from marketers to their founders to bridge your gap? Because what I've seen working also as a founder and as a marketer, that 80% of the project that I saw that failing wasn't because of lack of performance, but they were because of lack of highly detailed expectation of both of the sides.
Yeah, bridging that gap, right? I think those expectations are sometimes articulated in a way that sound very similar. Like, so that oftentimes before things get going, everybody kind of agrees, but they're really not in agreement, right? So like what the founder is looking for is there's a gap there from what the team is expecting and planning to do. And so, I'll draw from when I was working in advertising, working with clients, and we were working on large branding campaigns, right? And everyone agreed up front, like, yes, branding, awareness, like reach frequency metrics, like making sure meeting our audience, whatever. It's very much an upper funnel type play. Hour after these campaigns go live, how many leads did we get? Right. So the KPI that we talked about, awareness, opinion, consideration, these standard things, like, and we're launching like cars and stuff, big time campaigns that, like, and it's immediately how many leads, right? So like from the client, and it's sort of like as the founder, like I saw myself doing that with our, poor ad agents. We churned through a few ad agencies with me at the week because I'm like, yeah. Where's how come we're not getting sales? Like, how come no one's calling us? Where's our lead for? How come no one? And so, because at the end of the day, like in a startup world, we have needs and it's sales. Like I need, if we've proven and we believe we have product market fit, then why don't we have more customers, right? And we're doing these marketing efforts to build awareness, to generate leads, so I can get business opportunities and have more customers. And so I think that gap in expectations is, I would say, probably both sides need to think about it ahead of time, number one, and understand sort of like some self-awareness, I guess, with this. So as a founder, I recognize I have unrealistic expectations, but as a founder, I don't care that they're unrealistic. So we all need to accept that. And then as the marketing, team or agency, you understand that you have half as much time as you were told you have, right? Like you need to start showing results, unless it's, like you're killing it and you're just in this hockey stick curve and have all sorts of, room to be inefficient, right? Which I think those are very few and far between. Like the reality is, as a marketer working with entrepreneurs, you probably have less budget and less time to show results. So from a rule of thumb, if they say you have, this is a 6-month thing, great. You should show your worth in 2 to 3 months. So be prepared to make sure that you're communicating to the founder, to the folks, like what's going on.
I had the same discussion, and I will say, for example, with Udi Ledergor, that was the CMO for Gong, that did 100 in sales, and he was on like the CMO perspective, and we talk exactly on the same issue of like there was gaps between the marketing to the founding team, and he told me that as the marketer, his one important question to the founders, to the CEOs, was how come a success will look like in 1 year from now? What will make you happy? And I will ask, what is your one question for the marketer that when you're sitting with him, you want to hire for him, and like, what is this question that make you know she's the one?
So when I talk to this potential incoming marketing leader person, so what I want to convey, how I know they're the one, is if they're articulating, they're an understanding of kind of where we're at right now in the business and where we need to be, which in our case is, we want to be in a year significantly cash flow positive, right? That's what I need my leadership team and my strategic partners helping me charge towards. And so from a marketer's perspective, understanding that our timelines, are shorter. I'm not trying to build brand awareness that's going to help, 50 years from now, right? Like we need more tactical marketing work, right? We do need to build for the future. So someone who can kind of hold both of these things in balance, right? And can understand where we're at now and where we're going, and saying, articulating back to me, for us, those, the role of the marketer is like the role of everyone in the company. We need to get to cash flow, break even quickly, and then get to cash flow positive in a year. Right. So I'd like to hear, very specific, concrete things that demonstrate their understanding of the position that I'm in as the founder.
So I love those answers as a founder. And now to switch your hat into your investor mode, that
Sure.
one that you write check. As I saw, a bit easier than being a founder, especially like stress wise.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know. My financial guy told me I'm collecting K1s like baseball cards. So I probably need to think through my strategy a little more here. But this morning I bought a bar with a buddy down in Florida. So I can't really say no to things.
So I didn't plan a question about the KPI of a bar, but when you're investing in startups and in bars, and when you look on those companies, and happy to understand what, in your perspective, make a startup's marketing team successful.
I mean, I'm going to go back to one of my previous answers. I mean, when I talk to folks, so when I'm making investment decisions, I honestly just joking with my buddy this morning about my due diligence process. It's sort of like, well, that's a great idea. I'm in. What are we doing again? Sure, cool, right? Like, it's more about the people that I'm talking to and what I'm looking for: attitude, effort, competence, in that order, right? And so, I'll walk through like this. So this it's fresh in my mind. I mean, I think I'm making about an investment a month. I think right now I can't say no to great opportunities. It's like, and I'm trying to spread what I'm doing around too. I mean, like I invest in, like, as the founder of Ready Signal, and putting a lot of cash personally behind that because I believe in that. But that's an AI tech company, so I'm pretty heavy into that, and I do make some other investments there. But when I'm looking for investments outside of that, it's in healthcare, it's in other industries where I don't have a lot of technical expertise. Like I don't even drink alcohol. So like, I don't know, like, why am I buying a bar? But it's I'm looking for folks who do have that, how are we marketing this? Like, how is this going to continue to grow? Like, how are those things? And so I'm looking for people with, when I talk to them, like, I believe in what they're saying. I trust them. It looks to me that they're going to put in a lot of work and effort. I invested in this CPG analytics company in January, and they, in talking to the founder and the CEO, it's like, man, this guy, like on paper, I look like I could do what he's doing, right? But when I talk to him, like, man, this guy's freaking great. He's like what I look like. He's the real version of me. It's neat, right? And so, there that his, between his attitude, his effort, how much he's working, right? The team's working. You just see it and you feel it when you talk to these folks. So for me, it's a very, at the stage of investing that I'm doing here, where it's like these seed angel type things. It's very much a conversation with the founder and maybe some folks on the team to get that attitude effort. I am looking for competence because I'm obviously not going to be in a position to train folks because I'm the investor. But yeah, and then when I'm looking at the larger Series A, I'm typically along for the ride with other groups, and I'm sort of relying on them to do their research.
So, if I talk about those early stage investments, and I understand that you like to do them as well, not only bars, some like pre-seed and seed, is like, what do you do as an investor when you see a founding team, you really like them, they're doing great at tech or their domain, but they have no marketing experience? What are your thoughts about it?
Well, that's where I help. So I got involved with a friend's. He does. They make smoothies, and so it's clean energy smoothies. And so he's a very smart guy, very smart at making product. But I feel like there was some help where I could basically when I'm working with the smaller, very early stage companies, I will absolutely sit and listen and hear what the challenges are, and then connect to people. Right. So a lot of what I do for those companies is leverage my network and say, oh, you should talk to so and so. Like, oh, I have a friend who is on Shark Tank. You should talk to him because that's a cool thing. Like, so let me connect you to them. Where it's not so much like I'm in there, telling anybody what to do. It's more like, let me find really smart people that I think could really help you, who are willing to help you, and try to make those connections. And then I'm on the board of, I don't know, several companies too. When I take those seats, that's where, I can get a little bit more hands-on, where I'm actually sitting there being more prescriptive in techniques and things. I tend to drift more towards the sales side of marketing too, because that's where I um, think most of the days are on sales. So I do get very hands-on, I guess, where folks kind of invite me into that role.
When you try to talk about like those marketing and those marketing budgets, and when you evaluate those early stage startups, what marketing budget allocation would raise a red flag for, like in percentage or like in volume, like for seed and for those A rounds?
There isn't one. I guess I'd want to know what the ROI is on that spend. Like if you're getting $4 back for every dollar you put in, spend whatever you want, right? So it's more, my questions would be more on what are you getting for those allocations, right? Like, are you spending 50% of your budget on customer acquisition and you're not acquiring customers, right? Like that's where I would be looking, if that makes sense.
You talk about your diligence process for the bar, which was super cool. And if we talk about diligence process for something about less alcoholic, like a startup,
Yeah.
how and you coming from this marketing, from this sales perspective, how does your diligence process really look? What are your real questions beyond the attitude, beyond the competence, and what are you looking at, like for pre-seed company, those companies, without sales or with a bit sales, and for those seed companies, if we take for example,
It's a reference, right? So did someone so why, how do I know about this opportunity? Right. So I'm much less likely to invest in something if this isn't someone else recommending it. So I do have a little bit of a filter there. And then second, when I do get involved in these companies, is if they're, a couple degrees separated from me where I don't know the founding team personally, like I do need to I read the read the deck, when I look at what market are they going after, and then I start to question things. I like to, as I sit there and poke holes in some assumptions that I'm making. I'll ask some questions and see what type of answers I get. You see a lot in decks. This is a $17 trillion market and stuff, and it's like, really, I don't know. Let's dial that back a little bit. And then does it really pencil when I bring things into a little bit more focus? I'll look at just who else is invested? What stage is this at? Are we growing or shrinking? Do we have product market fit? I'd like to invest in companies. I like to invest in other people's companies that have customers, right? You don't need to be profitable, but do you have customers that have choice? So if P&G is a customer of yours, that's a pretty good signal to me. So that's a good signal, right? But if you don't have any customers, then I'll probably be a little bit more nervous, unless I have some other things that are really getting my attention. For those, for that level of betting, I bet that on myself. I have plenty of ideas,
So first of all, I think we cover most of the stuff, and now for the final three questions that I'm asking every participant in this podcast is: what is a common misconception about running a startup that you would like to debunk?
So I thought about this one. I think at some level we see this. So I grew up in Southeast Michigan. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Detroit sort of dominated my culture growing up. I grew up in Dearborn, for those who know where that is in relation to Detroit. In Detroit, there's this sort of concept of hustle, and it's we talk about it and we use it. And I have a lot of friends who always have a side hustle, things and I did this myself for years. I started a company with some friends called areacoderentals.com, which no one's ever heard of, because we did that as a side hustle for 2 years, and then it was just a giant waste of time. So I think while folks can get started on the side, my experience, at least for me and my friends and everyone that I know personally, starting a company requires 100%. So for me, when I think I started maybe 2 or 3 companies over the years on the side. They were my side hustle. None of them went anywhere. It was just a way, fun maybe, but giant waste of time and resources. For me, it was, when I quit the job at Ford, I was all in, right? I had no safety net. There was no, my wife, stay-at-home mom, I had 2 kids, dog, and it was we were either gonna make it, or I was moving in with the in-laws. There was no, it was it. And that for me was a motivation I think that I needed, where failure was just simply not an option. To start my company, I refied my house and took out some cash, right? And then I got a couple of investors to give me some loans. So I had 9 months of cash reserves. That was it. So it was that pressure that I think for me. So that misconception, I think, is the side hustle. I think that doesn't work for me, didn't work for me. I don't know anybody. I know a lot of people who have those side hustles, and I play guitar. That's my hobby.
So you said, build a good relationship with your in-laws. Is a good tip.
They don't know that was the plan.
So if you could give yourself one advice at the beginning of your career, your entrepreneur career, after you left Ford, what was it?
You have a lot less cash than you think you do. That's just,
I love it.
I thought I had 2 years saved up. I had 9 months. It took a lot longer. Yeah.
And for the last question, which question did I need to ask, but I didn't?
Maybe why? Why did I do that?
Why
I'm not sure I have a great
it?
answer to that. I got to think about it. I should have thought through what I just said there. Yeah, I don't know. The reality is, when I look back on it, when I talk to some folks, it really makes no sense. I had a great job. I had a great team and pretty cushy lifestyle. I was very in shape. I was much less buoyant than I am today. But it was for me, when I looked at sort of the next kind of 10 to 15 years, I guess, it was sort of I have some runway that I should try to take. I could just coast it out, and be fine. And it was a great job. I love Ford. I drive a F-150 today, and I grew up in Dearborn, which is from Ford. It's kind of a dream job. I was looking at it, I guess, yeah. So I will say this. So I was sitting there, and the reasons not to leave my job. right? It was a good job. All the things I said, very handsomely paid. It was a really good work-life balance. And all that. And I felt like, oh man, if I leave this, it's going to be really hard, if not impossible, to get this again, because this is a dream job. And a friend of mine was working for he was CMO of a very large clothing company, big brand. He hit me up and was like, hey man, why don't you be our chief analytics officer? And I was like, I'm good. And he's like, why don't you talk to these folks? So I was like, all right, sure. So I have this conversation. So I talked to them, and it really was this realization of like, in listening to them, the job was effectively across the street nearby. And it was that realization of like, I guess when I was sitting in my office, it was probably like July, August, the summer before I quit. And it was like, well, get off the phone with them, and like they're super happy. And I'm like, that actually sounds like a pretty good gig. Like that's fine. Like it's not really enough for me to want to leave Ford for, but it seems fine. And it was sort of this realization of like, I could probably go get another job. Like that probably is there for me. And I think it was sort of like realizing, like sort of like taking that constraint off the table and sort of looking at what it could mean for me and my family if it did pay off, right? So the downside risk, probably more than I recognized or wanted to recognize, but the upside risk was there. And I think once I kind of cleared that anchor that I had placed artificially, that's what really enabled me to sort of like to quote my business school professor, Stacy Jackson, to look before you leap, but still leap.
Jason, I had a great time hosting you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Edgar. This was great. I really enjoyed the conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.